Hi everyone, welcome to this week's prophecy update. As always, it's our desire to bring the events that are happening in the world from a biblical perspective and also a prophetic perspective. So thanks for joining us this week. What we want to talk about this week is what's been going on between the United States, Israel, and Saudi Arabia, and then you can throw in there Egypt as well. But really, the Biden administration has been working with Israel and Saudi Arabia, trying to broker some type of deal to normalize relationships between Israel and Saudi Arabia. And they've been doing it for some time. And currently, they've been working on it and getting together and trying to form diplomatic relationships. And the Biden administration really is pushing this pretty hard. They want to do this before the next election campaign year of 2024. And so they're really pushing hard to get this type of deal set in motion. Now, for us in the prophecy world, this brings attention to us because of the players that are involved. Obviously, Israel, the main player in the end times, obviously. And then when you look at the United States and you look at Saudi Arabia, those two individuals or two individual countries are players in the Gog of Magog invasion, not in the invasion part, which we know is a Russian-led coalition with Iran and Turkey and whatnot, but the bystanders who do nothing but protest against the invasion of Israel, but do not come to the aid of Israel. This alignment seems to be forming and has been forming for some time. And that is the young lions of Tarshish, which we'll talk about. And then obviously Sheba and Dedan, which is modern day Saudi Arabia. And so when you see this coalition trying to form where the United States and Saudi Arabia and Israel are involved, it causes us in the prophetic world to see the red flag and say, whoa, wait a second, let's pay attention to this, because this is projecting out into the future where this alliance happens. And these people, Saudi Arabia and the United States, these two nations, do nothing in trying to stop the invasion of Gog of Magog. So we want to talk about that. And we want to get into the weeds a little bit about what this alliance is about, what they're trying to accomplish. And we'll take it from there. So let's start out with what does this alignment, what does Israel want out of this? What does Saudi Arabia want out of this? What does the United States want out of it? And anyway, if you want more details on this, I don't want to go through all the details. It's laborious, but the Wall Street Journal had a good article about this, and you can check that article out. Caroline Glick had a good article about this, and you can find it here and there on the internet. Anyway, here's what's involved. According to the Wall Street Journal article, there are two islands, strategic islands, the Tyran and the Sanafir. These are islands in the Red Sea, the Egyptian government used to have control of it, but they're giving it to Saudi Arabia, or they already have, and given Saudi Arabia control of that. And that's a very strategic aspect going into the Red Sea, coming from the Red Sea into the Straits there. And you can see that on the map that I have in front of you, how important and strategic that would be. It gives access to Aqaba in Jordan and Eilat in Israel. So both countries are definitely involved critically in that. And really what's happened is Israel would then have to trust Saudi Arabia to make sure that this shipping lane stays open and does everything to make sure it doesn't get blocked, okay? And so this would be a lot of Israel putting its faith in Saudi Arabia, and that shifting from Egypt to Saudi Arabia. And again, there's a lot at stake here. If I were Israel, I wouldn't trust Saudi Arabia with a 10-foot pole. And if I was in the United States diplomatic department, foreign relations, or whatever, dealing with Saudi Arabia in the State Department, or whatever, I wouldn't trust Saudi Arabia as far as I can throw them. Again, this is the problem of doing deals with Saudi Arabia. They don't play fair. They don't play on the same level because, again, the ideology of Islam allows them to lie with taqiyya, and they can lie in kind of situations, and it's totally allowed in that religion. So I simply wouldn't do any deals with people that have no integrity because their religion allows them to lie. So that's a problem. And so I wish Israel wouldn't do this. I wish the United States, but again, you're talking about Joe Biden's administration. Of course, he's not running anything. It's really his handlers that are running this. And anyway, it's a lot more than just the islands. For instance, Israel wants, like Saudi Arabia, to allow Israel's airlines to cross over into Saudi airspace. Israel also wants to be able to fly planes into Mecca and Medina, I believe, for the Muslims in Israel. So they want that ability, and so they've asked for that. And then being able to cross over, for Israel, it would allow them to shorten their flights to India, Thailand, and China, and stuff like that. But the real big ticket item in all of this is what Israel wants, and even what Saudi wants, is they want the United States to deter Iran. This is part of the deal, okay? That we're going to get into a deal, but we want you to take care of this guy, this player, Iran, in the Middle East. And Iran is a major threat, as you know, to Israel. It's a major threat to Saudi Arabia, and they don't like it. Saudi Arabia has tried to do negotiations with Iran, but again, they don't get along very well. So Saudi Arabia is looking to the United States, and then Saudi Arabia wants security from the United States, that if it's attacked, that the United States would defend it, and they want the United States to allow them to have a so-called peaceful nuclear program, and then having the ability to buy U.S. weaponry as well. And again, how does this fit the United States' interest? Well, the United States has a problem with China in the region. The United States doesn't want China in the region. And so what the Saudi Arabia is wanting, this treaty-bound assurance that the United States is going to help them militarily, allow them to do their nuclear program, and provide weapons that they can purchase from the United States. And really, the issue then is to get China out of the region. That's the problem. So Saudi Arabia has been working with China, and economically and militarily, and definitely the United States doesn't want any military bases built in Saudi Arabia. They want to stop China's influence in the region. So that's where the United States brings its interest into all of this. And then, of course, Saudi Arabia wants Israel then to adopt, concessions to create a Palestinian state, which is never going to happen, by the way. But therein lies all the particulars of what these three nations want from each other. Now, interesting, Caroline Glick, who I highly recommend you read her articles and videos, watch her videos. She's fantastic on the developments that are going on in Israel. And according to Caroline, she said, quote, Biden's advisors are seeking assurances from the Saudis that they will not replace the US dollar as the currency of exchange in the global energy markets. And she goes on to say, over the past year and a half, the Saudis have agreed to sell their oil to China in yuan. That's the currency of China, right? The problem with the U.S. position is that it was the Biden administration itself that created the opening for a parallel market for energy sales not tied to the petrodollar. And she goes on to explain that. And so you can see we created a mess, and the mess we created then created, the ability of China to walk in there, right? And so now it's like we want them out of there, so here's the deal we're going to try to negotiate. Okay. Anyway, if you continue to read Caroline's article, she goes on and makes another important point. And she says, as for technology, Glick refers to the journal that reported that the Biden administration is demanding that the Saudis limit their use of Chinese Huawei 5G technology. What is the big deal about this? Well, she goes on in the article to explain that as Carice Witt, the executive director of Signal, which is the Sino-Israel Global Network and Academic Leadership, explained on her show in early July that basically China is building Saudi Arabia's new technology-based city, Neom. You remember that? We have talked about Neom. Neom is the straight line city that goes across Saudi Arabia, and it's supposed to be eco-friendly. It's supposed to represent the 15-minute city, that there's no cars there. You can do all your business, and play and work and everything in the same area. Again, pushing this ESG compliancy of 15-minute cities, which is going up all over the place, right? And so they're building this, but they're using China's technology to do it. So that's not a good thing as far as the United States is concerned. They don't like that. Now, again, these are some of the particulars, and again, the big ticket item is the alliance. And what you're looking for as far as the prophetic world is the alliance. It doesn't matter what the issues are. You're looking for this alliance, okay? And that's what we're paying particular attention to. Now, something similar like this happened a while back under the Trump administration, and it was the Abrahamic Accords, if you remember that. It led to the normalization agreements between Israel and the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, and Morocco, and then it tried to get Saudi Arabia to kind of get on board, but they really didn't. But what was this about? Well, the Abrahamic Accords had major problems theologically. I don't expect Trump or Jared Kushner to even understand this, but I do expect prophecy students to understand this. And when we make our comments on the Abrahamic Accords, the Abrahamic Accords divided the land. The Abrahamic Accords also called Jerusalem the eternal capital of Israel, but then said that the Palestinians could have the eastern part of Jerusalem for their capital. And it's like, no, you can't do that. You're dividing the land and you're dividing Israel, and you can't do that. And there was some word salad in the treaty, so to speak, in the Accords about the situation over Jerusalem. So in one sense, it would say, oh, this is the eternal capital of the Jews. And then in another sentence, it would say, this is the capital of the Palestinians. And it's like, no, that's wrong. And that's not approved by God, obviously. A lot of people theorize, just let me do a side note here. A lot of people theorize, and I'm talking about the tinfoil hat brigade, and I'm not talking about the conspiracy nut jobs that are out there. But, we all know that the Abrahamic covenant is still in effect, right? And the concept is, I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who curse you. That's God's foreign policy in how you handle Israel, okay? And we see that at work not only in the Bible, but today. Bill Koenig, I would recommend his book, Eye to Eye, will document every time that the United States does something bad to Israel, then the Abrahamic cursing applies and something bad will happen in the United States. And so I believe it's still in effect, and obviously you do too, that you have to bless the Jews, not curse them. So anyway, I believe that the Abrahamic Accords was cursing Israel because it divided their land and divided the capital, Jerusalem. That being the case, a lot of guys in the prophetic world said that perhaps that is why Trump went through what he did, because of him allowing Jared Kushner to push these Abrahamic Accords, which did nothing but divide the land. And if you divide the land, you're going to get hammered by the Abrahamic covenant. And again, it's conjecture. It's a good theory. And I think it's worth noting that it doesn't matter who you are. If you're a Christian or if you're an unbeliever, you mess with the Abrahamic covenant and you divide land and you take land away from Jews and you don't support their right to be in the land and support them as a people group. Supporting the Abrahamic covenant is different than supporting the government. The government will make stupid moves, Like if the government goes through with doing a deal with Saudi Arabia, I don't back that up, and neither should you. But at the end of the day, that's how the Abrahamic covenant works. Whether believer or unbeliever, it will curse you. Now, cursing doesn't mean you're sent to hell. Cursing means that a penalty will come to you. And what you dished out will come back to you in some form or fashion, and typically in an ironic judgment. So you mess with Israel's economy, your economy is going to get messed up, right? That type of deal, okay? So anyway, we saw that happen, and it wasn't good. And typically, none of these agreements are good for Israel. I mean, Israel gets in there, and I understand Netanyahu, and I understand what they're trying to do. We just want peace, and we don't want to, we want to have allies, especially when we're dealing with Iran, and I get it. They want the United States to back them up. I just hope Netanyahu doesn't compromise with the Abrahamic covenant. I just hope he doesn't. We pray that he doesn't, and doesn't give up land. I hope, and see, part of this is Saudi Arabia wanting Israel to work towards creating a Palestinian state. That's you can't do that. You can't do that theologically. It's just not allowed. And again, I hope it never happens. But I hope Bibi, for Bibi's sake, that he doesn't do that. In dealing with Saudi Arabia, you have to understand you're not dealing with a nation that's level-headed, so to speak. I mean, you don't have to go any further than what they did to Khashoggi. And that whole Khashoggi episode, and obviously it was blamed on MBS, the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, which we'll call MBS for shortness sake. They sliced and diced Khashoggi, right? Because he went against the regime. These people in Saudi Arabia are different. You don't do deals with these types of individuals. And right now you can see like kind of what Saudi Arabia is doing by sports washing, some of their human rights violations, obviously, and trying to get live golf on their side. And now they got the PGA involved. And so they have that whole sports washing thing. And then MBS is greenwashing Saudi Arabia, so the whole world is going ESG. And so now, Saudi Arabia is trying to say we're green too, and we're energy efficient, and we're going to go green with NEOM and the 15-minute city and all that, because they realize what's going on here. They realize what the globalists are doing, so they're greenwashing as well to be a player in the future world. Anyway, MBS has already told aides, that he isn't ready to establish full diplomatic relations with Israel because of Netanyahu and the conservative element in the government, and that he knows that they won't accept the creation of a Palestinian state. So I don't know how far this goes, because he's already not fully behind everything, knowing that situation. And so according to Netanyahu, this concept of getting a Palestinian state, he said it's not a high priority in their negotiations. And Bloomberg reported this. This is what the Wall Street Journal reported. Bloomberg said that Bibi specifically said this, quote, it's a lot less than you think, end of quote. Quote, it's a sort of a checkbox. You have to check it to say that you're doing it, end of quote. So it tells you it's just not a high priority in the negotiations. So that's a good thing. That would be a good thing. Israel in this deal is also concerned about the Saudi Arabian nuclear program in the region, Everybody knows Israel has nukes. They do. They're the only ones in the region, and they should. They should have a nukes. They don't say they do, but we know they do, But it's not good to have their neighbors like Saudi Arabia, or especially like Iran, having nuclear weapons, because you just can't trust these governments. You can't trust the Saudis. You can't trust the Iranians. So and of course, Saudi Arabia is saying this is for enriched uranium, for research purposes, yada yada yada. And I wouldn't believe them. I just wouldn't believe them. I think they want to have nuclear weapons. I think that's what they want. And of course, Netanyahu's under the gun, and you got to pray for that guy, because, okay, so do we allow Saudi Arabia to have nuclear weapons if it offsets and curtails and stops Iran's nuclear program? Do we do this deal? Because America says we got to let that happen in Saudi Arabia, because then I can get America backing me to stop Iran's nuclear program. So Bibi's in a very, very difficult position politically. He's got a threat. Israel has a threat, Iran, and he realizes the United States can back them off, but then he's got to support Saudi Arabia. So he's in a pickle. It's not a good thing. It's just not. I wouldn't want to be in that kind of position, because it's so difficult. And we just pray for him, pray that he makes the right decisions about all of this. But let's get down to prophecy. Let's talk to prophecy, okay? So we know that the Gog of Magog invasion is a pre-tribulational event. I do not believe it happens during the tribulation because of the 7-year cleanup that needs to happen. So even if it happened at the beginning of the tribulation, you still have a 7-year cleanup. So guys like myself, Arnold Fruchtenbaum and others believe that the Gog of Magog invasion is a pre-tribulational event. It happens before the tribulation. Is it possible we could see that event? Yes, it's very possible, and it's possible we couldn't. It just depends on the timing of the rapture. If the rapture is closer to the tribulation, it's very possible you and I could see the Gog of Magog invasion. Or if we're raptured tonight, we wouldn't see it. But it still is a pre-tribulational invasion. Okay, because of the 7-year cleanup. So what should we expect? If it's a pre-tribulational event, we should see the players starting aligning. Now, we've seen the enemies of Israel already aligning. We've seen Russia and Iran and Turkey and that alliance and Sudan and all those, and Libya, all the players that are involved. It's a non-Arab invasion, non-bordering country invasion. Okay, it's different than Psalm 83, which is an all-Arab invasion of bordering countries around Israel. So it's different than Psalm 83. I believe Psalm 83 comes before Gog of Magog, based on the idea that they come for plunder in the Gog of Magog invasion. Okay, therefore, we already see that enemy alliance already, okay? And we're having our eyes watching Russia right now, who eventually leads the alliance, and watching what happens as America fights a proxy war with Russia using the Ukraine. That's actually what's going on. America is fighting a proxy war with Russia, okay? Trying to take Putin down, trying to do regime change, along at the same time covering up the criminal activity that the politicians that are involved in the Ukraine are doing, like the Biden administration and everyone else that's involved in covering up. We also know that there's bio labs in the Ukraine, just like the one like Wuhan. And why are they doing that? Again, it's exactly what Fauci was doing. So we have that problem, and then we have the money laundering, and we have billions of dollars being given to a country, and we don't know where that money went. And we're giving money to Zelensky, who is nothing but a comedian and a prop being used. And again, understand this. The Ukrainian government is one of the most corrupt governments on the planet. I'm not talking about the people. I'm talking about the government and Zelensky and what's going on with the Biden administration and Biden family. And basically, it's just crime. It's international crime is what's going on in the Ukraine. But it's a proxy war with Russia, okay? So that being the case, we're going to watch what happens to Russia, because eventually Russia is going to turn on Israel with an Iran-Turkey alliance and the other players involved. Okay, but there are protesters, okay? Protesters. And they're the ones that Ezekiel names that basically watch the invasion. They could have got involved and stopped it maybe, but they sit on their hands and do nothing and all simply protest verbally, but don't take any military action. Let's read the passage. Ezekiel 38, 10 through 13. Thus says the Lord God, on that day it shall come to pass that thoughts will arise in your mind, and you will make an evil plan. Talking about the evil alliance to invade Israel, right? And you will say, I will go up against the land of unwalled villages. The land of unwalled villages is how Israel's current state is today, okay? It's militarily, it has unwalled villages, it's military secure, and as it says, I will go to a peaceful people who dwell safely, all of them dwelling without walls and having neither bars nor gates. And the idea of dwelling safely is how Israel's state is today. They are dwelling safely. Now, what do you mean safely? Because you see, they're surrounded by terrorists, and we're hearing Hezbollah, we're hearing Hamas, Fatah, and all these proxy terrorist organizations for Iran and whatnot attacking her constantly. What do you mean? Dwelling safety, the Hebrew word for it means militarily safe, okay? Militarily safe. It doesn't mean they're safe from attacks happening, and that's, it's saying they're militarily safe. That's a picture of Israel today, and it's a picture of unwalled villages, okay? That's what's going on, neither bars nor gates. And then it says in verse 12, to take plunder and to take booty, to stretch out your hand against the waste places that are again inhabited, right? Israel was a waste place, now it's inhabited. And against the people gathered from the nations, that's the Jewish people, gathered from all the nations, again, satisfying the prophets that predicted the return of Israel in unbelief to their land, as predicted out of the nations. And again, to take plunder and take booty, and that's where there's the impetus for the invasion. Okay, they want to take plunder, they want to take booty. Well, the concept is, what are they wanting to take? Well, they want to take Israel's plunder, they want to take Israel's booty. Well, where did Israel get their plunder, and where did they get their booty? You see what's going on here? That somehow Israel has won a war, that's how you get plunder, and that's how you get booty. Therefore, it implies that an invasion, that Israel has went to war at some point in time and has plunder and booty. Hence, this is the theory, again, theory, because we're not sure in all of this, the theory that Psalm 83 happens prior to this invasion, because Israel expands its borders into its neighboring Arab territories and takes plunder and booty. Therefore, the impetus to attack Israel for that plunder and booty is there for Russia and Iran. And what could that possibly be? Well, again, in Israel's expansion of Psalm 83, and if you look at the other prophets that talk about the results of Psalm 83 and what happens to the Arab countries surrounding Israel, Israel militarily throttles the surrounding countries nearby. And this is where the destruction of Damascus might come into play in Isaiah 17, possibly. Again, we're saying possibly, it's a theory because we're not sure, but we're trying to put things in order the best we can. And if you see the expansion into Syria, into Lebanon, into Jordan, into Saudi Arabia, okay, so it stretches down in Saudi Arabia. So now you would have Israel that has access to oil from Saudi Arabia. And this may well be why Saudi Arabia is put into a very weakened position. But if you add that oil from the plunder, for the plunder and the booty, and then you add in the gas reserves that Israel found, right off its coast, it's just endless amounts of gas, natural gas. That puts Russia in a very hard place economically, and Russia would just simply collapse if it couldn't sell its gas or oil on the market, because you now have Israel flooding the market, a free country flooding the market with gas and oil, and people would be drawn to Israel's gas and oil, right? And this is kind of, you can see this making of it in Ukraine, as the U.S. put sanctions on Russia and froze a lot of their ability to sell their oil and gas and whatnot. And then we, as you know, hit the pipeline out there that was going to Germany, cut the gas line off. We blew that up. So it puts puts Putin in an economic crunch. Well, if Israel expands her borders and takes oil, it's going to put Russia in a very precarious position economically. And if you read Ezekiel, it says hooks will pull her in. God's going to use hooks to pull her in. It's plural. So it's not just one item, one ticket item. It's a multiplicity of items that pull Russia and Iran and Turkey to invade Israel. But obviously, energy you could see being a big deal. And that's what we talk about, the booty. Okay, let's continue on. And it says, who have acquired livestock and goods, who dwell in the midst of the land. Again, this is all about Israel's return back into the land, as predicted. Okay, verse 13. Sheba Dedan. Okay, Sheba and Dedan is Saudi Arabia. Okay, that's the ancient word for Saudi Arabia. Okay, and then it says the merchants of Tarshish and all their young lions. Notice what it says. All their young lions will say to you, have you come to take plunder? Have you gathered your army to take booty, to carry away silver and gold, to take away livestock and goods, to take great plunder? Now, what is that? Well, it's Sheba and Dedan, Saudi Arabia, which we're talking about, but let's talk about the merchants of Tarshish and their young lions. The merchants of Tarshish, as you know, Jonah fled to Tarshish. We would say that's Spain or Western Europe, okay? So Tarshish could be from Spain all the way up to the British Isles. Okay, so it's Western Europe is where the merchants of Tarshish were located. That being the case, if that's the location, which would include Spain, Portugal, France, Britain, Ireland, all that, Germany, all the western areas of Western Europe, then their young lions are the nations that were birthed from those countries. Okay, which would include the United States. And I think this is the passage that would, if we're in Scripture, the United States, this would be the passage that we're in, the young lions of Tarshish. We're the births that come from Western Europe. That's the United States, that's Canada, that's even Mexico, that's Central America, South America, Australia, New Zealand, those types of places, okay? Those would be considered the young lions of Tarshish. So, if that's us, and I believe it, I have a good hunch that it is, what do we do? Well, we join with Saudi Arabia and we say, have you come to take plunder? Have you gathered to take away booty? Why have you done this? Why did you take great plunder? All we do is politically question the invasion, but we don't go in to rescue Israel, which I believe is exactly the sentiment today with the United States administration. And it's not going to change. The United States does not like Israel. They just don't, okay? The Biden administration is carrying the legacy of the Obama administration, and they don't like Israel, okay? Biden might pretend he does, but he doesn't, and Bibi knows this, okay? And if you get any more left-wing politicians in the office of presidency, whether it's Gavin Newsom or whoever's coming down the line, they're not friends of Israel. They don't support that. The left in our country hate Israel, okay? So do the globalists, by the way. They don't like Israel. Most of the world doesn't like Israel, right? And we as evangelicals know this. Okay, so the sentiment is already brewing in the United States, and especially among politicians. And this sentiment will continue to carry on of not getting involved, not helping Israel, the only democracy, in the Middle East, and America will just simply protest but won't get involved. And in alignment with Sheba and Dedan, Saudi Arabia. And that's why when you see Saudi Arabia, MBS, the Biden administration, and Netanyahu doing deals like this or trying to create a pact, we're all going to work together, it sends red flags to all of us saying, aha, there is the alignment that is predicted in the future. I'm not saying right now it is, but it's projecting out into the future of saying, look, let's pay attention to this alignment and see things how they shake up, because it's possible we could see this. It is a pre-tribulational event. And if it's a pre-tribulational event, It's very possible that this could happen in our lifetime. Again, you got to keep both narratives. I'm not saying it will, because we could be raptured right now, gone, and we never see it. But the closer the rapture is to the tribulation, it's possible you could see a lot more of the setup of the beast system, right? I think it's very possible we could see the digital currency. Very possible a central bank digital currency will come in the next few years. We can see all kinds of crazy stuff, right? Because there has to be a setup. So this is what we're looking at. Okay, here's the interesting thing. Ezekiel made this prophecy 2,500 years ago. You and I now live in a time period where it's happening right in front of your very eyes in real time. You're watching the shaping of prophecy, lend itself to being fulfilled in the future, right in the immediate future. That's how close you are. That's how close I am. And we're seeing this. So in one sense, man, I'm excited in the fact that we're close. We're very close to seeing the Lord. Very, very close. So that's exciting in one sense. Okay, but then it brings responsibility. The responsibility is I got to tell people. Now, again, you don't have to go to somebody and say, hey, man, did you see all the particulars in the pact that Israel and Sadi Arabia want to do? You don't have to say that. All you have to say is, hey, look, Ezekiel predicted an alignment of protesting nations, an alignment of invading nations. And look at this. Look what Ezekiel said, and look what's happening on the ground. Boom, you use that as a springboard or an opportunity to wake people up to what's going on. That's how it works. That's how you use prophecy to do that. And that helps them explain the chaos that's going on in the world. And when you come to them and saying, look, I can explain the chaos. Here's this is why this is happening, that's why that's happening, this is why this is happening. And then you can put it all into a cohesive framework that says, yeah, this is what God predicted. Man, that's powerful. So my friends, use that to your advantage when you're talking with people, because here's the thing. We got to get people saved before it's too late, right? It's getting down. The countdown is on, right? It's like that. It's like when we played hide and go seek when we were little, and we'd have one guy sit by the tree and start counting down. 10, 9, 8, 7. He would beat the countdown. And then right before he said 1, ready or not, here I come, that's how it's going to be. And the countdown's ticking down. And Jesus is going to say, ready or not, here I come. And he's going to take the church. So anyway, that's what we got to look forward to. But we got a job to do until we're called home, right? All right, let's make people aware of this particular prophetic development that's happening right in front of us, okay? Hey guys, with that being said, a couple announcements before we go. Make sure you get our app. A lot of people have a hard time finding us on the different platforms. We're on YouTube, Rumble, and BitChute, but we get shadow banned a lot of times on YouTube. So get our app. Our app is the best thing you can do. Put it on your phone, your iPad, whatever, and you'll have up-to-date everything. Sermons, prophecy updates, whatever. Get the app. It's great. Go to our website to launch into the other platforms. If you want to go to Rumble, BitChute, and YouTube, great. But go from our website to those locations, because sometimes people will put our name in there and they can't find us. So again, we know some algorithms are working against us. So go to the website, get the app. Best thing, easiest thing to do. Second, make sure you're on our text alert system. Follow this link, give us your name, your phone number, basically your cell phone, so we can text alert you if we're going to be in an area, if we're having a prophecy conference, we need to warn you about something that's going on. We want to be able to text alert you. And third, pray for us. We're under spiritual attack, demonic attack constantly for telling the truth. And if the Lord puts it on your heart to help us financially, we would greatly appreciate that. Anyway, remember what the Lord said. When you see these things begin to happen, look up, lift up your heads, for your redemption draws near. God bless you. We'll see you next time.